thinking of retiring in Zimbabwe, but rather torn between rural peaceful settlement or urban settlement with convenience? Well, this video is for you. Watch as I give you a full breakdown of the comparison between urban settlement versus rural settlement. We're going to be considering factors like cost of living, healthcare and infrastructure, life and community, land ownership, cultural and spiritual lifestyle. So all this is gonna be in the video. At the end of the video, I'm sure most of you will be in a position to make a proper decision or any decision that would best suit them. Let me say this before we start. Most people in the diaspora are getting older, and some of them have already made up their decisions to stay and get old in the diaspora, which is still okay. But for those that would rather be settling in Zimbabwe or any other part of Africa, these are very important factors, points to consider before relocating. Don't just do what your neighbor or what your friend is doing. We all come from different backgrounds. Let me say this first. Some people don't have any families left in the rural area, so already that's no point to even consider, because I don't think it's practical. It is easy, it is possible, but I'm not sure about the practicality of going back to settle in your home area where there's no sibling, there's no uncle, it's okay, it's still okay, because even in the urban areas, people live with neighbors who they hardly know where they came from. But the reason most people would be relocating to their rural areas sometimes is to be with their extended families and people that they've known growing up. But if you had different reasons, I'm sure it's something you'd really want to be thinking about. But anyway, let's dive into the full comparison between urban retirement versus rural retirement in Zimbabwe. First is the cost of living, which we are going to consider now. In general, guys, rural life is more affordable because you can easily get land, you can build a home, you can grow your food and avoid city level rentals when you're living in the rural areas. So sorry guys, when you see me look down, I'm looking at my cheat sheet because I put these points down because I don't want to miss anything important. And then in the city, it's a different case. In the cities, you have to buy your groceries. Unlike the rural areas where you can grow your food in the backyard, you can grow all, you have your chickens running around in the neighborhood, you have cows, you have goats that you keep, you don't necessarily have to go and buy. You can grow vegetables on your small gardens. Yes, people do have small gardens in the cities, but sometimes it's not easy to even water the vegetables because of water problems, sometimes water rationing if you don't own a borehole and stuff like that. And yet in the villages, people can grow these things. In the cities too, you have you have expenses for transportation, you have higher rent to deal with, whether you like it or not. If you didn't own the house in the city, you'd have to be dealing with rent. Not just the rent. When you are renting a property or somebody's house, that also comes with different rules and do's and don'ts, and sometimes limitations on how many people can live with you. I mean, controlling boundaries, and you can't bring visitors. You can only be 3 or 4 people in the house. That's all not easy to deal with. And yet when you're in the rural areas, it's very easy to bring your entire family, to accept visitors at any time of the day and not have to bother about transportation costs. Yes, here and there you may have to drive, but you don't need to drive every day. In most cases, you have retired and you are no longer going to work, so it's not like every day you're going to have to drive. But in the cities, sometimes you'd have to drive to go and buy groceries. Sometimes you'd have to drive to go to the bank. Sometimes you drive to just visit a friend or a colleague, which is very, very different in the rural areas. The urban areas will offer easy access to banking and, of course, supermarkets that they don't have many of. I would say they don't have much of those in the rural areas unless if people are living close to growth points. But even the prices may be a bit inflated, and some products have been on the shelves for much longer than you would like them to be on the shelves before they've been bought. And there's not much variety in these rural grocery stores as we get in the urban areas. Now, talking about healthcare and infrastructure. Now, in Zimbabwe, cities offer private hospitals, they can offer pharmacies, they can offer, I would say, relatively quicker emergency services, unlike in the rural areas. Also, the cities might have more reliable water, although lately there have been issues with water supply in most high-density suburbs, but I understand some places have had community or communal boreholes sunk for neighborhoods that they can use. In the rural areas, people own wells, and whilst they have no immediate access to healthcare, they have clinics, local clinics, but they can only offer services that are not that advanced. You'd have to be transported to a bigger hospital, which if you are not mobile or if you are not driving, it might take the entire day to get there, because now you're going to have to be able to make arrangements with a neighbor, a friend, or even call family members from the city to come and pick you up to drive you to a hospital in the city. And if it's a real emergency, guys, let me put it that way, sometimes it may already be too late by the time you get to the hospital. Of course, depending on the nature of the emergency that you encounter. Now, back to the electricity point. Whilst there's load shedding and shortages of electricity in the urban areas, I want to believe, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section, guys, Jenna, I still want to believe that electricity and water supply is still more reliable in the urban areas than it is in the rural areas. Also, I understand some people in the rural areas in a position to sink boreholes, but not everybody can do that. In the cities, people, if there's one person in the neighborhood that has managed to sink a borehole, I find people are very kind enough to share and allow neighbors and people in the community to come and share, get water from the borehole. The same thing in the rural areas, but not many people can afford to sink that many boreholes. I've known, I think, the government in some areas has also gone in the rural areas to sink boreholes for communities so that people don't go dry, which is a very good thing that the government has done. There have been rural areas where boreholes have been sunk, and people are quite appreciative. The unfortunate thing now is we've had drought for some years in a row, and the water table, even in Harare, just mentioning one of the cities, I'm not sure about Mutare, Masvingo, Bulawayo, I'm not sure about that. The water tables have been going much lower and lower. So we hope and anticipate that we'll be having a better rainfall season coming, so that the water tables can go up high. Sorry, in the rural areas, you find people can now use or install solar, and if they can afford, if you are retiring, and especially coming from the diaspora, people have saved a little bit of money to be able to put in place solar infrastructure to sink a borehole or well water and you may need to treat it. I've seen some people in Harare, they go to the stores, I don't know which stores in particular, they go and buy small bottles of a liquid that they use to treat water, even in the water tanks. So that's something to consider. If you can't do that, obviously consider boiling. You can't just drink water right from the water source. So yeah, in the rural areas, not everybody has solar, not everybody has a borehole, but in the urban areas, there's more boreholes, and because people are more concentrated in their areas, it's easy for the fewer people who have sunk boreholes, to share with the community. I know in the rural areas, they'll be sharing too, those boreholes that have been sunk for the community, but some people do walk distances to just go and get a bucket of water. In the cities, some people walk distances, but they are not as long. The distances are not as long as those distances that people in the rural areas have to walk just to get water. So the comparison there is whatever works for you. If you are in the rural areas and you can set up your water, you can put your solar panel, and you think healthcare, you don't know when an emergency comes. So that's one area you want to really think about seriously. Before I go any further, let me say, for those people who are diasporans, I know people who've made arrangements, like they go back. Sometimes the children in the diaspora and the parents go back to retire back home. So the plan is to kind of snowbird if you are coming from cold countries, or visit Zimbabwe during a part of the year, or visit Africa during a part of the year, and go back to your adopted home, wherever, UK, South Africa, US, Canada. So when you go, you get your doctors to check you, make sure everything is okay, get your medication, go back. But when emergencies come, sometimes they're unforeseen. So if you're in the rural area in Zimbabwe, it might get tricky. That's where you might need to start thinking about. And some people also fly back to their countries of adopted countries, and then they come back, and occasionally, or once a year, once in 2 years, however your arrangement is, and that might work. And sometimes I've always thought that it might, at some point, once you get to a certain age, I've talked to people who are in their late 80s, they are not very comfortable flying frequently, like once a year. That's too much to deal with. Those flights are quite lengthy, guys, and tiring. And some of them live alone because the kids have grown up and they moved to their own with their own lives, right? So I've known some people to have just moved permanently back to Zimbabwe or Africa and say enough is enough. They are not ever going back. So it is their children who come and visit. And should an emergency happen, some people, I've known people who say, you know what, I will do my best to take care, to go check in the city, in Harare, in Bulawayo, in Masvingo, or Mutare, and I go home. Whatever happens. At the end of the day, they appreciate that they have lived a long life. Let's go to the next point now, the lifestyle and community. Now, in as far as lifestyle is concerned, it is busier in the cities. It is more individualistic. I think when I talk with friends about such topics, I think individualistic is an understatement. I've always thought the best way to put it is more selfish in the city. People don't really share. You find people don't help each other as much as people in the rural areas help each other. But anyway, there's more entertainment, there's more dining options, there's more events, there's more cultural centers to visit. But of course, noise, especially traffic noise, and stress because of trying to manage bills, of driving to work, of being in the traffic. You know, people drive to work, and how long sometimes it takes you to drive from the city center to get home after work. It's same thing in the morning. Even if you are using public transport, Sometimes it's not easy. People are crowded. The roads are slow because there's traffic jams. It's not easy to deal with on a daily basis. Well, one thing I want to look at whilst I'm still talking about the city lifestyle is I think the schools are better equipped for education versus schools in the rural areas. Although lately there have been schools in the rural areas, I won't mention them by name, that have been producing very, very good O-level results despite their location in the country. So I think because some good teachers are going now to be teaching in the rural areas because they've seen that it is more affordable to live in the country, so now they're getting good teachers as well. So you find some students even in the rural areas are performing much better than students in the city. One other thing might be because children in the city get caught up in the transport problems. They get up so early to go to school, especially those that are going across the town to get to school. I've known kids to be from Fakosi or Kambusuma, Chitungwiza, going to Allen Wilson, going to Queen Elizabeth in the city. You know, it takes up a lot of their study time just trying to get from one point to the other. And at the end of the school, the parents can't really monitor what the kids are doing between leaving school and getting back home. So, you know, that's another disadvantage of children that are in city schools but are not going to the schools that are within the area that they live. Also in the rural areas, I find students in the rural areas usually go to school together, and when they go home, there's no public transport, they walk together. I find that very healthy and very social, and it does help to improve their social skills rather than a child who's just rushing to the bus, or maybe a parent comes to pick them, they drop them at school, and then they, you know, I think it's part of growing up properly for children to have time to engage with their schoolmates, with their age mates, and the only time to do so is usually after or before school, or as they walk back home, like happens in the rural areas. So if you were retirees moving back to the rural country, or not just retirees, even people that would be thinking to go back to Zimbabwe or Africa before they retire and they have children or grandkids, that's another very important point to think about or to consider. Now, still on the lifestyle and community, in the rural areas, lifestyle is slower paced, is at a much slower pace. It's not hectic. It's not as busy as it is in the city. And there's very strong community bonds, you know. Usually, like I've said before, if you've come from the diaspora and you want to retire, you're going back to your village or wherever you grew up, the uncles, the securos, some other cousins are still there. It's such a friendly environment, and people will always, because of our culture, the tendency, people are always welcoming. As long as you go there with an open heart and accept the differences, usually financial, that may exist between you and them. I have heard stories, I'm not sure if this is true, people who go back home and they are not happy because they think the family has become a burden, because everybody expects to get something from them. I don't wanna believe it, because food is easier to get in the rural areas, unless if you are talking about city life where people eat a slightly different diet. People grow their food in the rural areas, they have cows, and you know, I think it's not fair to judge people in the rural areas like that. And at the end of the day, they are family, they are part of us, and the reason we are going back to the rural areas is partly because we need them. So we need them, and they need those that are coming to rejoin the community or the village. It's also easier to bond in the rural areas because these people that you are going to live amongst have most likely known you from when you were a child, or they've known your parents. Even if they don't know you, you may have grown up somewhere. They may have known your parents really well. So it's easy to get land. The Sabuku knows you, so it's easy to get land for yourself without running into problems that people in trying to acquire land in the city might encounter. So people already know you. It's easy to fit in. It's easy to be part of the community without having to worry who is what, and who is planning to do anything bad to a neighbor or to somebody who is coming back to join the community. Now, talking about land ownership and security, I find in the rural areas, most of the land is passed down from one generation to the other. Most of the land that people are building on is land that previously belonged to our sekurus, maybe our fathers, or even if our parents are still alive, there's enough land for diasporans to go and fit in without any problems. You know, the Sabuku or the headman already knows that you are part of the family, so you just go and fit in, build within the homestead, you know, family homestead. No hassles, no problems. The only downside to it is that there is no title deeds, but you are guaranteed of ownership as long as there is family members living on the land. Now in the city, it is a different ball game because you have to pay, and now land is becoming very expensive in Zimbabwe. I'll say so because I've known people who have bought land, let's say at 20,000 some years ago, but the same land now is going for 35,000. That's a lot of money one would actually be using to build a house in the rural areas or the countryside. Now you pay so much, and now you're gonna need extra money in the city to be building the house on the land that you have bought. So if you have retired and you are trying to be managing your finances frugally, guys, you might need to consider that. Are you willing to part with 30 or 40 or 60 even thousand? I think you've watched some of my videos. I've mentioned prices of stands that are in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. If you have that kind of money, fair and fine. But if you didn't have, rural settlement is too perfect and fine. So after investing in city land at that high price, you have building standards to go by. You can't use common brick. You'd have to get to buy building materials from store, and there's delivery costs, there's all that. And sometimes if you're not around when the house is being built, anything can happen, you know. And if you didn't pass the inspections, I think they are called city inspections, you'd have to redo most of the building, right? So which is costs that may not be anticipated and can put you in a ditch, guys, if you are not careful. So you really have to open your eyes. And if you are a diasporan coming to build, sometimes you don't even know where to go and buy these supplies. So don't just send people, go with them. And usually when you are using foreign currency like the US dollar, some tricks that you don't know, you can negotiate price as long as you are buying cash. You know, it's good to save on every dollar when you are building, guys, because it goes a long way in the building process. And if you didn't know that you could save by just paying cash, you know, it's gonna just go and you don't know. And a building project, you know, you're gonna need every cent to make the house to a standard way you'll be appreciating. And also building in Zimbabwe, sometimes people, I find when you build in the city, you have to kind of conform with how the neighborhood is coming up. If you decide to go to a low density area, is different from building in a high density area. Now you may have to spend more because you decide to go to a low density area than somebody's building in. So all those factors you have to consider. Sorry, do you build in the high density, which is fair and fine? We grew up in the high density area, so I don't see why somebody would be ashamed to go and build up a house in the. I've seen very beautiful houses. I've seen very beautiful man. I've seen places come up like Dema. I've seen places come up like Domboshawa. You know, just around Harare. If you thought Harare was maybe too crowded for you, you go and build in Dema. You go and build in Domboshawa. You go and build in some other Melfort, some other places. All those areas are coming up, and they've helped to make kind of some life between urban and rural area. And then you build your nice house, affordable house, where life may not be as fast-paced and as expensive as in the city, and you are not in an area which is very rural if you didn't like it. Now, in as far as security, I think there is more crime in the cities than there is in the rural areas. Although, looking at the trend, I find more and more people moving to the rural areas, building more beautiful homes. And this is my thinking. Going into the future, when more and more people come and build more houses, who knows, there may end up being more crime than there is in the cities, because now, you know, the people, the thieves, and they come and look for usually people who have settled, and I'm not sure how safe it will be, especially for people who have moved into the area and people think, oh, they're diasporans. A lot of people think diasporans come and they have money. They don't have money. Diasporans are struggling like anybody else. But the fact that people have moved in, people might just think you are standing out for some reason, especially if you have built a house that is totally different. Crime rate might be is definitely lower in the villages, in the rural areas, but who knows if it's gonna get worse or not. And you know, there is no immediate police presence to help you if you end up in a situation. But one good thing about living in rural areas, if you are living in the community with everybody else, people can stand up for each other and help each other. I've known people to make arrangements like, if you hear this at night, it means I'm in trouble. And then once people think somebody's in trouble, they wake up, they get up just to scare away whoever might be attacking a neighbor. So it's good to be in good books with your neighbors. Stay close enough. Be in a homestead where you can see and hear. I can't say don't go and live by yourself, because you know, people have different security concerns, and they can set up different security plans. They can have CCTV and whatever else they have. I don't know, but these are things to think about. You know, if you run into problems, what's gonna happen? Are you able to get help? And you know, so that is gonna help you think about where exactly to put your house in the rural areas. In as far as cultural and spiritual life, in the cities, they do have modern churches, and usually you attend with people you rarely know, and they have social clubs that they can go and entertain and each other or themselves. In the rural areas, it's a different ball game, because it's easier in the rural areas for retirees to find cultural and spiritual fulfillment in the areas where traditional ceremonies and ancestral connections and simple living are strong. And by this I mean in the rural areas. So all these factors put together, guys, think about it. Where do you fit in? It's a trade-off. Sometimes you move there, you do without this, or you stay in the city, you give up that. Some families would rather, retirees prefer to live in the cities during the week and then go for weekends in the villages or at their villages and come back. I think as long as there's strong family bonds and you're in good books, you grew up in your areas, and if you have moved to a new village where you are not known, Zimbabweans are very social people. They are very welcoming. You can fit in easily generally because of our culture, and mingle with people, and you will find yourself belonging to these communities that are so welcoming and loving. So the right fit for you is whatever feels better for you. Rural, of course, the financial costs, the social considerations, the healthcare, something to consider. What makes life more interesting and better for you? So let me know in the comment section, guys. What do you think after this? Did you find this topic helpful in any way? Have I left out anything very important? Is it an easy decision to make, retiring in Zimbabwe and having to make the decision to be in the rural area or in the urban area? Is it something easy? Can you put all that in the comment section? If you need to add anything, please feel free to do so. But this is it, guys. The fact is, whether we like or not, at some point, we are going to be faced with this decision to choose between rural or urban. One more thing I wanted to say. In the urban areas now, in Harare or Mutare or Bulawayo or Masvingo, and even the other areas, there is mushrooming these gated communities, which were not, when we grew up, we hardly had any gated communities. I found them quite ideal for retirees because they are gated. They offer some level of security in the cities. I'm not saying they are 100% crime free, but gated communities, you are closer to your neighbors, they connected living, you know who is who, and smaller houses, and because kids or family members may just be visiting. So also the land for the gated communities, depending on where you buy, may relatively be cheaper, and building in a gated community or buying a small house, house in a gated community could be cheaper relatively too. I'm not saying gated communities all come with cheap homes. No. Borodale Brook is a gated community. You have to afford to be there. Arlington is a gated community. You have to afford to be there. But within the gated communities, sometimes they have cluster units that are relatively cheaper. So consider all this before you buy. I would say drive around Bulawayo. If you want Bulawayo, drive around Masvingo, drive around Mutare, drive around Harare, see what's going on, see how people are building before you make a decision. It is very important. This is it for today. Just remember to comment, to share, and to subscribe. Until next time, bye-bye. Cecilia Zawi TV.